At a time when marriages fall apart as frequently as they come together, infidelity ranks on the list of most commonly identified reasons for divorce. More often than not, it blindsides a couple, destroying families and leaving in its wake a hurt, rejected partner and a guilty, ashamed transgressor. Why is it that a woman's closeness with a gym instructor can trigger a divorce, or a man's proximity with the maid servant leads the couple to the court for a divorce? In recent times, divorces are only on the rise. The question is why? Are we paying too much attention only to the day of the wedding? And there is no guidance whatsoever or counseling as to how one must conduct oneself in a marriage? Are couples taking each other too much for granted? Or is access to technology playing spoil sport? We'll try and analyze all these in this 1 hour. Welcome to Gender Discourse. I'm Lotty, Alaric. To carry this discussion forward, I have in the studio a distinguished panel of guests. I'm very happy to welcome Ms. Amrita Sharma, who is the author of a very well-known book which is aptly titled, What Did I Ever See in Him? So thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
And sitting next to her is Dr. Manju Mehta, who's a clinical psychologist at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. I welcome you too.
Thank you.
Well, to begin with you, Amrita, we all know that marriage is a very sacred institution, particularly in our country. If we go even by the times, the ancient times, up till now, wedding in a family means a lot. But do you think in today's times, is there a lot of pressure on the couple who's married?
There is. In fact, I would say most of it is absolutely urban and contemporary. Couples today have as in their ambit, their horizon is really, really wide. It's expanding day by day. They have work pressures, they have society pressures, they have individual personal pressures in terms of aspirations. And that leads to a lot of expectations from each other and inability to fulfill those expectations. And that is what leads to major problems, a lot of resentment and eventually divorce.
Right. So, Dr. Manju, what would you say? Do you think that somewhere, can we really say this, that the marriage is now beginning to disintegrate in our country? Or is it too loaded a statement?
No, it is not loaded. And what I feel is that, you know, marriage, the way people are defining it, the way people are viewing it, it is changing in now younger generation. The older generation still feels, you know, that marriage is something forever. Once you are married, you have to compromise and you have to live. But younger generation, their idea about marriage, about living together, all these things are changing. So one, how we perceive marriage, that is changing now. And second, there are a lot of other factors also, like high expectations from each other. And even to some extent, still it holds on. Like role of other family members, that is also very important.
And which these days is missing because there are no joint families anymore.
But still there are extended families, and sometimes the pressure can come from distance also.
Yes.
So those things are still not gone, and in Indian culture still bonding between mother and son is still very strong, and that also has influence on the expectations and things about the married life. Also the lifestyle is also very important, because in lifestyle, if we look at people who are working hard and who are on the computers or laptops for a very long time, late working hours, and then stress is very important factor which is coming. But most important thing is communication between the couple, which is leading to problems. Because if you have less time for each other, you don't have quality time for each other, you are not communicating, then you are drifting apart, and without any reason, you know, it is affecting your biological, sexual, emotional behavior. So there are several factors which are actually in lifestyle, which are calling for high incidence of divorce.
That's right. Well, you've put it in a nutshell. We'll definitely be taking this one by one. So talking about the definition of marriage, Amrita, I think over the years this definition has undergone a sea change, and this had to happen because as societies evolve, a lot of things change. But as far as marriage is concerned, somehow it takes a beating. Would you agree with that?
It has taken a beating. Ideally, it should not have done that because couples actually, youngsters, when they get into marriage, it's more looking for companionship. It's more about looking for a partner in your life. But unfortunately, it's come to a stage where it's no more till death do us part. Now it's like till divorce do us part. And the people are not ready to make compromises initially, as in what Dr. Manju was saying. The older concept was different.
Yes.
And people were ready to go the extra mile. They would make an effort. They would compromise, negotiate. But all that is very conspicuously missing today. Couples are not ready to even give in an inch. They are not ready to kind of compromise, which is very important in a married life. And you have to do it. And it doesn't mean kind of, I don't know, most youngsters today have started perceiving that as a kind of an ego issue, which it is not. And I think because they fail to understand the difference and draw the line between, adjusting and letting go of your self-esteem or dignity. They have to make that distinction very clear for marriage to work. And which is why I would feel that the whole concept has evolved and changed for better or for worse. There are a few things which have become better.
Correct.
In terms of women, and I wouldn't say women really, but basically both the partners have more freedom. They have more say in the married life, and they are supposed to, and they have come to accept that decisions, whatever it is, have to be taken jointly because they're both equal partners. Women earn as much as men, women contribute, women work. Everything is actually an equal partnership. So it's become more of a partnership than a kind of imbalanced relationship. So that is something that really needs, that is something we need to work towards. Make it turn in a direction where you realize that, you have to give in a little and you have to get a little. That balance needs to be worked upon.
Right. But this certainly does not mean, Dr. Manju, that all the marriages which were there in the past, just because the marriages were there, they were happier or they were better in any sense. Because of the stigma that was attached to, say, divorce or to being separated, and also because women were leading many of the women were leading a very stifling life because they did not have a say. As she said, today women have a say, and nobody really took their opinions for anything. So they were just there. But today the woman has a voice, she has a right, she's asking for it, and if she doesn't get it, then she knows that she can walk out of the marriage. So what do you think, that today, because the woman is becoming powerful, because she is financially independent, that is the reason that she can take these decisions, but it is perceived as if women particularly are not really serious about their marriages?
No, women are serious about their marriage, and many of them say that they want to maintain their marriage under whatever circumstances it is. But definitely, what you said is very important, because these factors have become very important. Because the cases that I see, in that often women think that I am not a doormat. Earlier they would accept, but now they don't want to accept that.
Correct.
And they are ready to fight on their rights. They are more vocal about their own needs into that. And their self-esteem is also very high these days, and they are trying to compromise, as well as they want their share also to be looked after. But there are other factors also, like earlier it used to be unconditional trust and honesty in the marriage, which is going away these days, and because of several work environment or home environment circumstances, people have started doubting each other, so that honesty and trust is not as strong as it was in some cases earlier.
Right.
So that is also one of the factors which is calling for divorce.
Well, trust, this is a huge statement, this is a loaded statement, there's a lot really that is on the surface and that is below and whatever. But in today's times, I think one of the major reasons for divorce is still infidelity, if we really go through it. Of course, there will be incidents where a couple can work through those things. But I don't think many people would really have that kind of courage or the sense to really deal with it. So what has really been your experience? Because you've written that book and you had a lot of research yourself, Amrita. So just share with us a few experiences.
Regarding infidelity in a married life, this is something which is a very serious issue, which has always been serious, and it's something which has become very, unfortunately, very common these days. That's because the amount of exposure people get today, women and men both, especially women, because that is not the case earlier. But with the kind of exposure, with the kind of freedom that they have and independence, women are not ready to kind of settle down with something that they're not okay with, not happy with.
Right.
Infidelity, in terms of, there is no justification for it, of course, but the fact is that we have to understand the reasons behind it sometimes.
Correct.
There are times, like Dr. Manju was saying, the whole issue about quality time between couples. In absence of that, it's usually, it's not about men or women, but whichever partner is not getting that kind of quality time from her partner will start looking for it elsewhere. So the whole feeling of infidelity comes from that feeling of a certain lack of attention that you need to get from your partner, a certain kind of trust, a certain kind of belonging. That feeling is missing, which is what leads to them looking around, looking elsewhere, because everybody needs that kind of emotional bonding with the partner. That is what marriage initially had started out to be. And if that is not there, it's a very humane feeling. It's very natural for people to look for it and kind of, you know, go for it when they feel they have found it. So that is something. And the opportunities these days, I would say, are much more, because the exposure is much more.
True.
But
and the women are much more independent than they were, say,
absolutely.
even 20 years before.
Yeah,
right,
absolutely.
Right. Well, so those are reasons, but there can be really no particular reason for a marriage to really go wrong, because it is only those two people who are involved in the marriage who would know what is really missing between the two. Well, folks, we'll have to slip into a very short break, but this discussion is getting interesting. Do come back, as when we come back, we'll also try and understand as to where does the law stand really as far as divorces really go. So for that, we'll be joined by a noted lawyer. She's Mrs. Geeta Luthra. So don't go away, as we'll see you on the other side. Welcome back. This is Gender Discourse, and today we are talking about marriage and divorce. Well, as I promised, we have with us and now we are joined by Ms. Geeta Luthra, who's a noted advocate. So thank you for being with us, Geeta. And for all of you who've just tuned in, this is Gender Discourse, and today we are talking about marriage and divorce. So if you have a point of view, if you have anything that you would want to share on the subject today, this is your chance. Pick up your phone and reach us at 1800115314 or 23035420. Do tell us as to what do you think of the subject. Well, Geeta, so we've been talking about as to how marriages have come along over all these years, you know, the kind of evolving that has happened, the kind of changes that are really taking place. But in your experience, I just want to ask you a simple question, that are divorces on the rise in India?
Immensely. They're really immensely on the rise. And the whole ethos has changed so much. You know, there would be a time when 99.9% people would be resisting divorce, so that if one spouse wanted a divorce, the other spouse would be opposing it tooth and nail.
Correct.
Whether it's the husband, maybe to save the marriage, whether it's the wife who feels that she doesn't want a divorce at any cost. But that was the ethos. And today, that percentage has become some 10 to 20%. And the other 80% seem to be, if one spouse is insisting, then that the second spouse is accepting it as long as they have a decent financial settlement or a decent way out, if the exit is decent, nicely done, with respect. So I think that that blemish which divorce carried has reduced. The second, I think people are to a large extent fed up with lawyers and the courts. So they feel that, look, let it be quicker rather than spend so many years, 10, 20 years in courts. So, you know, at one time I remember the courts would ask me, but why can't you settle? And, you know, you had this lady who said, a divorce over my dead body, so you couldn't really settle. And the courts would say, but he's giving you a good amount, but you can't do it if the lady is not ready.
That's
and
right.
she feels she's not to blame. So you, obviously the law envisaged that it's sacred. Now, I think those barriers are falling to a large extent. It's still supposed to be sacred according to the Hindu Marriage Act, etc. But I think the barriers have reduced immensely. And so now if a court says it, many of our clients, I mean, would say, ma'am, sure, let's explore this. It's worth exploration if it comes to a good fruition, if the custody terms are good, if the maintenance terms are good, if I get a right of residence, you know, those parameters which are important to a lot of people. Well, if that's happening, then we can look at it. You did not get this as a first-time response. If you got this response, you got it after 10 years of fighting.
That's right, right.
So I think there's a divorce is definitely on the rise.
Right. Well, I will come back to this, but right now we're joined by Sarvesh Kumar from UP. So Sarvesh, if you can hear me, welcome to the show.
Yes, madam, I want to put a question before all of your experts.
Yes.
We are living in the age of women empowerment, and divorce and infidelity is the very common problem in the modern society. But we are facing in the court that when a pair or a party want to divorce, but he requests courts in Dowry Act. It is the misuse of Dowry Act, and it weaks and make very weak to our marriage. It is the very holy union, very holy institution in our society. But in the search of divorce, in the sequence of infidelity, it is very wrong. I want the opinion of experts.
Right. Thank you so much for that. I think it's something that should be addressed. So misuse of 498A, I think that's what he's really talking about. So is this the recourse that the women are really taking?
Of course, it's the recourse women are taking, and women are taking this recourse because they know that this is the one means that they will get to lump sum payment, a quicker alimony, quicker divorce if that's what they want, revenge if that's what they want. So everything is being called, even if it's after 5-10 years of marriage, it's being called.
So it's like trying to get even with the other person.
Yes, I mean, and it's not to say that there won't be a percentage of cases where it's true. So let's face it, I mean, the abuse is there,
Yes.
but the reason that it was brought in was that there will be this 20, 30, 40% of cases where it's genuinely correct. But then you have this vast majority of cases where it's being misused, and basically it's 498 is really saying, and then dowry.
Yes.
So the two things, one, cruelty to a woman with regard to dowry demand, and one is actual dowry demand and payment of dowry, and then if the marriage is breaking down, you want your goods back, you want your marriage expenses back. Now that marriage expenses it's a nebulous thing, because the fact is, in today's day, both sides seem to have lots of marriage expenses. Plus marriage expenses, you can't really bring them into the dowry ambit until you say, look, somebody's insisted that the marriage take place at X place, whereas I wanted to do it at a more modest place. So this is a problem of persons trying to recover what they think is lost monies. So then the dowry route is adopted. The second is, it's so much easier to file a case like this, and within 1 year, either because bail is not granted or is question mark, will it be granted or not granted, you get a settlement.
That's right.
So,
Geeta, I'll have to interrupt you one more time because we are joined by Mr. J.N. Rao from Tamil Nadu. So Mr. Rao, if you're there with me, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, sir, please go ahead.
Marriage today is a very delicate and fragile institution, and it is very easy for a marriage to break down, unlike in the past. The breakdown of marriage means that innocent children are the worst sufferers and their life is truncated. This must not be forgotten by the relevant father and mother. Counseling guides the mislead husband and wife to amicable solutions. Instead of undergoing mental torture for themselves and for the children, the husband should be more careful in the matter. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that point of view, really. Now, Dr. Manju, I'm sure you're dealing with a lot of cases like these yourselves. So first, I want to know that if you just compare, say, over the years, say maybe 15 years ago and now, what is the situation? Do you get more women coming to you now? Are they more vocal about what they want and what they don't want, or something that they don't approve of in a marriage? I would want to know what is the scenario, really.
See, I work in a psychiatry department.
Yes.
And there still, there are a lot of parents-in-law who would bring daughter-in-law with allegation that she is having mental illness, and that is why we want divorce. And the underlying reason could be that either the boy is involved with somebody else, or it could be dowry issue. But they just want to, you know, get an excuse for giving a divorce, and in which parents play a very important role in that. So that is one of them.
Right.
The second problem that we see, that is also related to, it is, I would like to say that it is low libido, or it is, you know, a person is having difficulty in sexual relationship. So sex is not only in extramarital relationship, it is also about not being able to perform the duties which earlier girls would not express freely, but now they tell their parents very often, and often it is surprised that parents know entire history about the sexual relationship of a couple, of their daughter, and that is another very big issue which is coming up where, and also there are people coming in because marriage is very stressful, and after marriage actually number of girls, they do get into depression or into somatoform disorders because they are not able to cope up with variety of expectations that are there in a marital relationship, or the husband is wanting. And but here the girls are also very adamant that they want that the home environment of in-laws should change, or they should be given a proper place in the family, the respect and everything. So in this, though the complaint comes from the boy's side, but the girl is also adamant that she wants to have her rights and all. So there are different type of problems that are seen in a psychiatric setting where people are brought in for help as compared to what lawyer would be seeing.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Amrita, I think let me just cite this little news item that was there in the papers a few days ago, that how, so it was a Mumbai newspaper reporting that how women who are really going to the gyms are striking up relationships with gym instructors, and somehow that is now becoming a reason for divorce for among many couples. So, coming back to, so I think these things are connected, where a woman's needs are really not being met, or it could be even the man's needs are not being met, and they look for you know, those kind of things elsewhere, and if they get it, then they don't shy away from really going for a divorce. So, what is your comment on this?
In fact, it actually was a report which kind of generated a lot of comments and a lot of you know, buzz among youngsters. Everyone was talking about it. You know, it was quite an issue of discussion among youngsters.
Yes.
But the thing is, it's not just about this particular incident where it's a gym instructor.
Yeah.
It's actually a kind of scenario where you are looking for some kind of emotional support, emotional bonding, emotional connect, which is missing in a marriage these days.
Right.
And anything, I mean, in my personal opinion, it's not about that gym instructor. It could be just anybody.
Though I think that's just a little example.
And it's about this person who was there at that particular time to fill that vacuum, that void, that emotional void which has been there in the married life. And the minute there is a void like that, something like this will come and try and fill it up. And it's not about, you know, nobody wants to be unfaithful. Nobody wants to kind of break the thing apart.
I'll have to interrupt you for a moment. We have this girl from Orissa. She's Swagatika from Orissa. So, Swagatika, if I'm getting your name correct, welcome to the show, and do tell me what is it you want to share.
मैडम, मेरा एक प्रॉब्लम है, मतलब मुझसे एक भूल हो गया था 4 साल पहले की। अब मैं चाहती हूँ कि अभी मुझे क्या करना चाहिए। ठीक है, हेलो।
Yes.
आप सुन रही हैं?
जी मैं सुन रही हूँ, लेकिन आई थिंक इतना सिर्फ कहना काफ़ी नहीं होगा और हम नहीं समझ पाएंगे कि आप किस बारे में बात कर रही हैं. बट एनीवे, इट्स टाइम फॉर अस टू स्लिप इनटू अ वेरी शॉर्ट ब्रेक. व्हेन वी कम बैक, वील बी टेकिंग दिस डिस्कशन फॉरवर्ड. सो डोंट गो अवे, एज वील सी यू ऑन द अदर साइड.